Hello everyone, my name's Ben Campbell. We're going to talk about food today and a little bit about the history of food and some statistics. I don't have a master's in nutrition. I have a master's in business, which makes me a good researcher, but I don't have a master's in nutrition. But what I'll be presenting you today is not opinion, but information based on research, statistics, etc. I was previously a member of the board of directors of an organisation called Doctors for Nutrition, which is an organisation full of nutritionists, doctors, specialists and others who advocate for the power of nutrition in reversing and treating chronic disease. So I have access to a whole bunch of research that they've presented as well. So a bit of a warning today. I'm likely probably going to upset a couple of you today, right? And it's not intentional. I have no intention to upset anybody today or to make you feel condemned about what you're eating right now or what you might eat normally, right? That is not my intention at all. And I apologise in advance around that. But what's really interesting, and so these are some of the resources that I've drawn from in terms of preparing for the presentation today. But again, no opinion, just facts. What's interesting is that we have a really complicated relationship with food. We think of food, we don't think of food that often really. We think about what we're going to eat, but we don't think about our relationship with food. And it's complicated because it's rooted in our culture, and different cultures have very strong relationships with their food. It's rooted in our family system, what we were brought up eating. Who can think back to their childhood and remember food that they had when they were a kid that was great? Things like, sprinkles, on white bread, lathered with butter at, kids' parties that you went to. And you've probably got buckets of, ones that you can think about. And what's interesting about that is that it invokes emotions in us, memories in us, things that we have, habits that we build, around food. We gather together here around food. It has a really strong emotional connection, a really strong memory around it. And so when we're challenged around some of those things, it's really difficult. So if I love going to the movies. What do you do when you go to the movies? You eat popcorn, don't you? Popcorn lathered in butter or whatever, vegetable fat that they stick all over it with salt. Now, you could tell me, Ben, you shouldn't eat popcorn at the movies, and I'd probably go, yeah. But movies, for me, have this real strong bond to my grandparents who used to take me to the movies, and we'd always have popcorn there. And so there's this connection. So trying to get me to stop eating popcorn at the movies is probably going to be difficult. And that's part of what we're going to talk a little bit about today. One of the things that we are constantly barraged with in social media, in advertising, is around food. Right? We see it all the time, and it's about, we get pressure from what we see in the media. We get pressure from each other around these things. And if you think about the pressure inside of your family or your family groups, if you decided that you were going to eat a particular way or do something different, you'd probably find, what are you doing that for, you nutter? Right? Because of that challenge. So I thought we'd look just a little bit about what some of the things that have changed in the last 100 years about food and what we eat. So 100 years ago, everyone ate at home, basically, right? There wasn't any eating out, right? So what you ate was what you made at home mostly. And that meant you knew exactly what was in it, you knew exactly what you were putting in it, you knew exactly what you were adding to it, and you probably knew where it came from. Whereas today in society, it's very different. Even many of the foods that we eat at home, we haven't created. Someone else has created that and packaged it up, and we often don't know exactly what's in it. The life of food, back 100 years ago, it was fresh food and it was seasonal. It was the food that grew in the season, and we ate seasonally. Whereas today, with the benefits of refrigeration and other things, we have food that is different than what it was 100 years ago. Processing, back then, 100 years ago, there was little to no processing of food. Right? No changing of how food was found in the environment versus versus today, which is highly processed, highly modified. We have genetically modified foods and lots of things added to what we think are simple foods. We brought food from the local grocer or butcher, who often hand-selected the food themselves. And so rather than it being put together by some big conglomerate or corporation that has intense, competition and marketing around their food. And then things like vegetables were grown locally, often in people's backyards, or the market gardener down the street, and it was organic because they didn't have pesticides back then, whereas now it's shipped across the country as an industrialised system in many cases. It's modified for shelf life and colour and other things. And then our meat, grown locally in fields, grass, that's what they ate. It was expensive, and we often ate small portions because of that, whereas today it's factory farmed and you have all of these other challenges around that. So what we've seen, then in the change in food, we see some correlations with what happens in terms of health, and we'll dig a little bit more into this. But if you were born in 1978, none of us here were born in 1978, right? But this is just the study that I found. Our lifespan was 75 years, and 10 of those years you are likely to be dealing with with some sort of chronic disease, right, over those 10 years, or some serious illness. And around about 3.8 of those years, you'd be living with some mobility issue. People born 10 years later, or a little bit later, it's gone down. The amount of years you've gone up, but your life expectancy of living healthy has actually gone down. So you're now living with 12 years of a serious illness and 5.8 years of mobility issues, which doesn't make any sense, right? Because we're living longer, but we're living sicker. This is from the British Journal of Ageing. Said that number of seniors with 4 or more chronic diseases is expected to double by 2035. Which is in 10 years' time. That's a problem for me, and a problem for my generation. And it's not just a trend for older people. Children with chronic health conditions within those periods, right, rose from 12% to 26.6%. Jeez, it's phenomenal. So that's 1 in every 4 kids right, has a chronic health condition. And then we see other impacts like, obesity, with 66% of adults who are overweight or obese, which is a massive number. That's 18.5 million people in Australia, and 28% of children. Now, I actually think God designed us to put on weight. Yeah, getting a few nods. And if you think about what food looked like back when God created it, it wasn't abundantly available like it is today, where you can just go to the local supermarket and grab whatever you wanted to eat. And so there were scarcities, and we read obviously in the Bible about famines and other things where, in times of plenty you would eat plenty, you would put on weight, and in times of leanness you would use the fat that your body stored to fuel your body, so you didn't die. But today is different, right? Because food is so plentifully available to us, and that's a challenge. A non-communicable disease is a disease that you can't catch from somebody else. So it's COVID, right? Is a communicable disease. The flu that's going around, or the cold that's going around, is a communicable disease. A non-communicable disease is things like heart disease and stroke and cancer and chronic other chronic diseases, type 2 diabetes. And in 2019, 47% of the deaths in low and middle income countries occurred before the age of 70, so that's before their time. 41 million of the 55 million global deaths in 2019 were due to non-communicable diseases, which is a massive percentage of the deaths. And then we have 80% of heart disease, stroke and diabetes deaths can be prevented. Big numbers. They are big, big numbers. And the impact on food, there's a number of studies, I'm not going to go into that, on mental health and the impacts on mental health today because of the highly processed nature of the food that many people eat, has a very, very significant impact. And you've probably heard some of the talks that have been given about the connection between gut health and brain health and the neurotransmitters that happen between them. We know that there's a massive rise in heart disease in Australia. It's the second biggest killer in Australia, behind cancer. And what's interesting is the amount of people that die from heart disease every day is like a jumbo jet crashing every hour. That's how many people die of heart disease in the US. The World Health Organization estimated that about 18 million people died from cardiovascular disease in 2019, I think that was. And you might say, oh well, Ben, my genetics, my father died of heart disease. My genetics are the reason why I'm going to have heart disease too. Well, according to the World Health Organization, only 5% of the population actually has a true genetic predisposition. But I guarantee you, when you go and see your doctor and you're having issues with your heart, the doctor will say, "So tell me about your parents." And they'll say, "Oh, my dad died of heart disease." Yeah, well, you've got a genetic predisposition. It doesn't say anything. He's done no testing on that. There's no proof that he's done that. It's just a throwaway line that we say now, and it's an excuse for what we consider our challenges. And what do? They write a script out for you. Here's a pill. That's what they tell you. Here's a pill. Because it's easy. It's an easy answer to a complicated problem. And I'll show you a little video just to describe what we don't often want to do.
With the strength of Zantac handling your heartburn, you can keep on enjoying all the foods you love. Zantac. Feel the love, not the heartburn.
So that's actually a real ad. It was a real ad by GlaxoSmithKline, and it's actually been pulled, that drug now, because they reckon they found that there's a chemical in it that causes cancer. Great. You've solved my heartburn, but you've given me cancer. But you look at that guy and you go, he doesn't want to change his habits of what's causing his heartburn. I'll just take a pill instead, and then I can do what I've always done. And that's the challenge with us in society about many things, is that we don't want to do the right thing to change, right? But it's very easy for us just to take and pop a pill. We often talk about our healthcare system. We actually don't really have a healthcare system at all. We have a sick care system, because a healthcare system would say would spend a whole bunch of time and money and other things, right, promoting how to be healthy and investing in that, rather than investing in what to do when you're sick. And so our healthcare system, our hospitals, our doctors, right, we're treating disease. We're not actually getting in front of it. And so healthcare system actually would probably look different. Who knows what this is? Food pyramid? Yep. It was first produced in 1986 in Sweden. 1972 in Sweden, and it was introduced here in Australia, I think, in 1986. Has anyone got any guesses about what falls in which category? Sugars are at the top. Yep. That's all you should know. Fruit and veggies down the bottom. Yeah. So this is what it was in 1986. So it talks about what you should eat most of, what you should eat moderately, and then what you should eat least. I remember seeing that at school. I don't know whether anyone else saw that before. Now that's actually changed. I hope your food pyramid doesn't look like that. That's probably not going to be super helpful for you. This is what it looks like today, and it's a little bit hard to read, but it's actually changed a little bit. So this was introduced in 2015. It's actually currently under review at the moment. And so Nutrition Australia is responsible for this. They obviously get global input from that and then input from a whole range of other sources. But one of the things that's disappeared off the top are the sugars. Sugars, salts, other things like that are not recommended at all, right? They've gone completely out of the food pyramid. And you can see there's been some other changes around, how far up the stack there are some things, and then what's further down the stack. According to, I think it was Nutrition Australia, 5.4% of Australians eat this way. So that means 95% don't, which is pretty extraordinary. I don't know, if I was in Nutrition Australia, I'd go, what am I doing this for? Why am I spending all this time and energy, right, if people don't take any notice? It's just interesting. And I think one of the things that we don't consider in the impact of this is, does your shopping trolley look like this, or does it look like this? And what's interesting is that when you look at our supermarkets do not look like the food pyramid, do they? They look like this. This is what our supermarkets look like. And of all of the aisles in there, and you think about, now forgetting things like hair products and other things at the other, right? There's a large concentration of things that are way up in that stack of foods. And even more, most of it's processed, and there's not a single thing on the food pyramid that says it should eat processed food, right? But most of it is. And this is why. This is what it's about. This is the impact, right, that it has. Because when you're selling a product for somebody to consume, I can differentiate my product through packaging, through marketing, through telling you all the good things about my product. It's got this much protein and this much calcium and, this, and it's low fat and it's whatever else. And I can promote a product and you go, yeah, I'll take that. It's a bit hard to do that with an apple, isn't it? It's a bit hard to differentiate one apple versus the next, other than taste. And so we've got these food companies that are using the power of their marketing, right, for dollars, that has a major impact on our health. And they're not all evil people, right? But you can see that the underlying thing here is the dollars. And it's our job, our complicated job, to navigate the maze of, how do we get around the dollars and think more about, what's actually healthy for us in terms of what we should eat. And this is often what's, how we get nutrition into our shopping trolley, right, through a pill. Just a couple of other interesting statistics around the financial underpinning of our health industry. Stent industry, US $12 billion. Statin drug industry, US dollars $15 billion. Type 2 diabetes industry, $32 billion. And I would challenge us all to think that I don't think there's a single organisation, or very few organisations on this planet, that actually care on your long-term health. Because I don't think even any of these care about your long-term health. I think they care about selling a product to you that you'll use for the rest of your life. I think very few people, very few organisations, very few products actually care about your long-term health because of this. All right, what does the Bible say? For the love of money is the root of all evil. This is interesting, isn't it? Right, this is how we used to eat 100 years ago. And who grows their own food at home? Anybody? Yeah, a few? Yeah. 100 years ago, I was talking to my mum about this. She talks about growing up post-war when there were no jobs around. She said almost everybody grew food in their backyard because there were no jobs around, and that's what they did. And when you look at this, there's so how much protein do I need today? How many carbs am I eating today? Right? There's no packaging that we need to read on that at all. And this is what we have to contend with today. in many cases, how much fat am I eating? What's the right ratio? If you care, right? Some people do. We're not food scientists, right? Nor should we be. We shouldn't be food scientists. According to the Australian standards, the labelling on food for retail sale, subject to these clauses, food for retail sale must bear a label setting out all the information prescribed in this code, and it's a very big document, except where the food is whole or cut fresh fruit and vegetables, except sprouting seeds in packages that do not obscure the nature and quality of the fruit and vegetables. Everything else has to have a food label on it, because apparently you're a food scientist and you can understand it and navigate it. That's not what God intended for us, is it? I don't think he designed food to have labels. I'm going to show you some confronting videos. They're not too confronting. They might just gross you out a little bit.
The National Hot Dog and Sausage Council states that hot dogs are made with trimmings, which is true, but it's not the whole truth. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN defines trimmings as the raw meat materials used for pre-cooked, cooked products are lower-grade muscle trimmings, fatty tissues, head meat, animal feet, animal skin, blood, liver, and other edible slaughter byproducts. The FAO also refers to it as meat batter, which is a pretty perfect example of two words that should never go together. During the actual manufacturing process, all these trimmings go through a series of pre-cooking, pureeing, and seasoning processes, after which they're squeezed into casings, which are often made of animal intestines. When Belgian filmmaker Alina Neepkins made a short film documenting every step in the process of making gummy bears, she found a process so graphic and messed up that it's sure to have anyone swearing them off for life. The main problem here is gelatin, one of the key ingredients in gummy bears. Well, before the bright colors are added and the fun shapes are formed, animal carcasses are broken down and cut into pieces, with the skin and bones boiled in water for a long, long time. It's all done just to get that gelatin, which is what gives the gummy treats their gummy texture. And if that's making you want to retch, don't fret too much, because there's actually another option here. Vegan gummy bears get their texture from agar, which is sourced from algae, and according to a report by the BBC, Nestle pays just $524 a year for a permit to extract millions of gallons of water out of California's national forests. In 2015, they even diverted 36 million gallons at the same time state residents were living under strict water use regulations and drought conditions. The worst thing about that is that a huge amount of that water is wasted during the manufacturing process. Business Insider suggests that the general rule of thumb is that however much water is in the bottle, you can estimate it took about 3 times that much to make the container. And it's not just water they use either. It takes about 17 million barrels of oil to make all the bottles for the bottled water sold in a year. The same amount that would have kept 1 million cars running for that same year. Don't go thinking the water you're drinking is much better than tap water either. Food and Water Watch found that 52% of bottled water in 2009 came from the same public sources that feed your tap. By 2018, that figure had risen to 64%. Worse still, bottled water isn't even subject to the same water safety processes and standards that have to be met by public water sources. It's just more wasteful. Ever wonder how fresh squeezed orange juice still shows up on grocery store shelves in the middle of winter? Once the oranges are harvested and squeezed, the juice is put through a process that removes all of the oxygen, allowing manufacturers to store what's left of the juice in massive tanks, where it can sit for a whole year or more. When it's time to use the liquid, it doesn't just need to be reoxygenated, it's also been stripped of most of its flavor, which is then added back in with flavor packs produced by companies which specialize in creating flavor and fragrance additives. This also allows companies to tweak flavors based on customer feedback and consumer tastes. Put short, they're artificially adding the flavors they took away in an attempt to make the juice last longer. Sounds delicious, doesn't it? Many of the grains used in cereals are prepped for consumption using a high-temperature process known as extrusion. The grains are cooked, certain components are removed, and then they're forced through a machine designed to reshape the grain into the desired form and texture. A study in the International Journal of Food Science and Technology looked at the impact of extrusion on nutritional quality and found that while some good things come out of the process, such as sterilization of the grains, some pretty messed up things happen too. Vitamins can be very easily destroyed during extrusion, including beta-carotene, vitamin C, and antioxidants. The process has also been found to greatly reduce the number of cancer-fighting compounds in soy, as well as the soy isoflavones credited for helping protect against heart disease, osteoporosis, and cancer. While extrusion is generally viewed as a massive step forward in the world of food processing, the loss of these beneficial compounds is something you might want to keep in mind if you rely on cereal for a nutritional boost. Because in most cases, you're only eating a bowl of carbohydrates that have little nutritional value.
It's pretty confronting, isn't it? It's really confronting. And when we look at that, what we see underneath that is we see money. Right, that's all we see. We see corporate profits and we see money underpin that. I mean, that orange juice one's a classic example, isn't it? Just terrible. Has anyone heard of the bliss point in food? A few people have heard of bliss point. So this is what food's one of the things that food scientists aim for when they're creating a food for you, and it's. I'll just read here. The bliss point is the sensory profile where you like food the most. And it's the bliss point for sugar, salt, sugar and fat is within a range within perception where there is neither too much nor too little. So it's the Goldilocks, just the right amount of saltiness, sweetness and richness. The human body has evolved to, yeah, right, of course it has, to favour foods that are delivering these tastes, right? And our brains then respond with a reward and a jolt of endorphins, which remembers where to get the reward from or where to get that food from. And so it's these two, this scale, the quantity or the concentration of sugar, salt and fat in a food, and then the pleasure or desirability. And so when they're creating foods, they want to try and hit this bliss point so they can get that perfect amount so that you'll just want to keep coming back for more. That's money, again. When marketers sell us products, they show us things like this. So when they sell us apple juice, they show us this, don't they? So when we think about sort of the humble apple, the apple has some sugar in it, right? It has some energy in it. It contains fibre, it contains potassium, calcium, vitamin A, vitamin C in it. And see, when God created the apple, he created pretty much a perfect food. Right? It had all these things in it. Right? And the sugar that's inside of it gave us energy but didn't hit our bloodstream too fast because the fibre in it slowed that down, so it was a slower release. And the fibre helps our digestion, and it sustained us as a food. When we think about an apple juice, now I've got some demos here. I'll take this. All right, so we've got this apple juice here. Now, when you look at the packaging on this apple juice, no added sugar, great. It's just apples. It's nice and cloudy, so so it doesn't look like it's highly refined. It actually looks pretty good, pretty healthy. And many of us will have with this maybe, with a breakfast, with our bacon and eggs or whatever else. This is generally the amount of apple juice that are an amount of apples that a container of this apple juice would have. Now, who'd sit down and eat 4 apples at a time? None of us. I'd actually probably eat a couple. After a couple, I'm starting to feel full. After 4, I reckon I'd probably be ready to throw up because once you put all that in your stomach. But what's interesting is when we actually look at what's happening in terms of the nutritional value, right? An apple juice has similar amount of sugar as 2 cherry ripes. 2 cherry ripes. 2 cherry ripes actually has less sugar in it. And this sugar that's contained inside of this is going to hit your bloodstream and spike your insulin pretty much almost immediately. I've tried it, and I can measure that, and I know that's exactly what happens. It's equivalent to 15 teaspoons of sugar. 15. And you drink that, and that's not going to make you feel full. And then we're going to go and then have our breakfast with our bacon, our eggs, and our hash browns and our other things. We're going to lay a whole bunch of more calories on top of that. Then we're going to feel full. And so what we've ended up doing is taking on a whole bunch more calories than we would have if we'd eaten a couple of apples. The perfect food that God created. This looks pretty good, doesn't it? Traditional mayo, 99% fat-free. That must be the healthy one. 1 tablespoon of that on your thing equals a tablespoon of sugar. What about this one? Yolk and oats, blueberry and cake. This is a natural brekkie, apparently. So when I read the packaging on this, packed with rolled oats and chia seeds and fresh yogurt and real fruit pieces. It's all natural. Man, that must be good for me. Look at it. Look at the packet. Must be great. Might as well eat a chocolate bar. Maybe you shouldn't eat a chocolate bar. I'm sure there's some other things in here that are better than a chocolate bar, but you can see how the marketing sells a story that just isn't true. 7.5 teaspoons of sugar. All right, lentils. Lentils are awesome. I love lentils. Lentils are good for you. Any health study you read will talk about the benefits of legumes and others, and these look pretty healthy, don't they? They're in the health food aisle. They look great. They're vegan apparently. They're gluten free. They've got a 4-star health rating. Keep it cleaner, it says on here. You might as well eat a packet of burger rings. We're getting sold a story which just isn't true. Lentils are great. Esau sold his entire birthright for a thing of lentils. They must be good. But they're not good when we change it from how they were originally intended. Right, when we process them, when we add all that stuff to them, when we do that, right, it's not good. Another video for you.
Wait! Stop! Don't eat that food!
Who are you? What are you doing in our house?
I'm from the future. I'm here to warn you, don't eat that food.
Why not?
The eggs, they're full of cholesterol.
What?
Cholesterol, it clogs up your arteries. Eating even just one egg can dramatically increase your chance of heart attack. Don't eat eggs.
Oh my God, thank you.
You're welcome. Godspeed.
Well, I guess I better take those eggs.
Wait! Stop!
You're back!
Yeah, we were wrong about the eggs.
How?
Well, it turns out there's 2 types of cholesterol. There's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, and eggs actually have both. So you can eat eggs, but just don't eat the egg yolks. So stick with the egg whites.
Yes, thank you.
Godspeed. Wait! We were wrong about the eggs.
Again?
Yeah, okay, so it turns out that the amount of cholesterol in a food doesn't actually affect how much cholesterol ends up in your blood. The eggs are probably fine. In fact, we sort of don't even know what cholesterol is. But the steak! You can't eat the steak!
Why not?
Turns out that red meat increases your chance of heart attack. You have to cut out red meat, so no steak!
Thank you.
Godspeed.
What? No steak, mister.
What?
Wait! We were wrong about the steak. It's the toast. Man was not meant to eat bread.
What do you mean man was not meant to eat bread?
Well, if you think about it, human beings should really only be eating what our Paleolithic ancestors ate. So, therefore, no bread, no toast.
How do you know what our Paleolithic ancestors ate?
Well, we just have to guess, right? I mean, we don't have any way of knowing. Whew. Okay. Went back to the Paleolithic. They are not doing well. I don't know what we were thinking. If anything, we should all be eating a lot more bread. Jeez. So I guess just ignore everything I've said and exercise.
Exercise, okay.
Yeah, you guys could probably use it. You've been just sitting here for the last 35 years.
It's been 5 minutes.
Right. Time travel. All right, well, Godspeed. Turns out it's genetic. Doesn't matter whether you exercise or what you eat. I'm sorry I ruined your meal.
I need 10 minutes.
Do you want some egg?
I'm sure you could play that video 50 million different ways, right? And this will change next week. They'll change next week, and the year after, and the year after, and the year after. We've got to move away from really listening to what man has, because the challenge here is that God didn't design food scientists. He didn't design us to have to know the intricacies of all of the information that's available around food, and we've got to get back to eating like God created it. Now, I've got just a slide here that I want to show that represents the Garden of Eden. It's hard to find a Garden of Eden without any nudity picture in it, so if you're a little bit offended by that, just maybe look away now. When we think about the Garden of Eden, we think about what God created, and there's quite a number of descriptions in that. God didn't create, he created food to sustain us, to heal us, to make us have long lives. And in fact, I've been spending a bit of time with Pastor John doing some sort of history stuff, and I found a photo in Pastor John's collection. I'm not quite sure how he got hold of it. He might have even taken it. Of Adam and Eve. The only person that had your long-term health in their best interest is God, right? It's the only being or entity or organisation that ever really cared about, and he cared about it when he created the food for us, and he designed it to work with our bodies. And when we read in Genesis, and God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass and the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after this kind. And God saw that it was good. He didn't design us to create processed food. And so the closer we can get what we eat and what we consume to what God created, if we can recognise what God created, not because it's on a package, right, but because that's how God created, the closer we can get to that, then the better off we are going to be. And see, when man messes with it, they mess with it, and they break the design, they break what God designed. And this has been a source of concern for millennia. When man tries to change what God designed, he ruins it. Thinks he's doing a better job, but he ruins it. So what about food for our soul? I think we have the same problem in Christianity today. Man has tried to change Christianity to make it look good. To make Christianity have that bliss point, where it's the right amount of love and the right amount of this and the right amount of that, and just let's leave that bit out because that's a bit contentious, etc. This is a Bible from nearly 200 years old now. When you change what God originally wrote and you try and make it more palatable for today, it doesn't work, and it causes all sorts of problems. This is what Christianity looked like back in Jesus' day. Right? Jesus sitting down, telling the amazing things about what God's promised, and then man decided that they were going to change it. And we read here, not that which goeth into a mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defileth a man. And that's what Jesus talked about. And this is what Christianity looks like today in some circles. Doesn't look like the previous slide, does it? No way whatsoever. And this scripture, but all their works they do for to be seen of men. That could be a marketing slogan for a food company. Let's do stuff so that we can be seen of the consumer, right? So that they'll buy our product. Here's another example of what Christianity looks like today. For the time will come where they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. If I didn't tell you that was a Christian Sunday service, you'd think it was a rock concert. You'd have no idea. Why do they do that? Because they want to make it palatable to people. They were just like the food scientists. We have these religious scientists that try and break it down and break it apart and try and make it palatable to people. And I used to work for an audiovisual. I used to work in the audiovisual many years ago, and an audiovisual equipment manufacturer who used to sell projectors like this told me about this particular church, and that he'd sold them these projectors that they use for their fancy displays. They were $250,000 each, and they had 3 of them. Why? But after their own lusts. That's why. Now you might say, well, that's Catholic Church, right? What about other churches? Well, these ones are just as bad. Having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof, from such turn away, because they change it as well, right? They've changed the doctrine, they've changed the simplicity of the doctrine as well to make it being more palatable, and there's no power there anymore. A few years ago, we had a lady over at our house for dinner, and she'd been in one particular church for 50 years. Anyone here been in? I know you guys have. Anyone else been around for 50 years in church? Yeah. She'd been 50 years in this church. And her husband was previously a minister of the church, and she'd been a diligent attendee for 50 years. And we were sharing our personal testimonies that night, things that, the miracles that we'd experienced, being healed of PTSD and saved from death, and etc. She'd never seen a miracle. Not one. How many miracles have you seen in 50 years? Hundreds, thousands. Not one. Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. Well, we know what we should do, right? We read really clearly in Scripture about what we should do. And the Scriptures tell us very simply, right, that if any man shall take away from the words of this book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life and from the things which are written in this book. If we mess with that, we are in trouble. And the churches that mess with that today, they are in trouble. We just need to follow the book, and it's pretty simple. And we know that this is the starting point around that. Acts 2:38, repent and be baptised, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins, and will receive the gift of the Holy Ghost. That's the starting point. But of course, that doesn't guarantee a long and healthy life as a Christian. There are other things that we need to continue to do. And so here's our spiritual pyramid. Lots of this stuff. Fellowship, praying in the Spirit, reading the Bible, visiting the sick, coffee mornings, serving, Bible studies, researching the Scriptures, right? These are all the things that do most of these things in our spiritual pyramid. And then, we have to do some other stuff. We've got to do some other practical things in life which aren't terribly exciting. But if we keep them and place the emphasis on them that we should, which is not much emphasis, and we think about these things under here, and that's where our heart is, that's where our thinking goes into these things, then God's going to bless us, and we're going to have an amazing, abundant, fruitful spiritual life. Amen? That's it. Time for cake.